Hello everybody, John here, and today on To The Garage, we're still on the suspension saga. Today we are removing and replacing the springs on the back of the XK8 with Adamesh loaded up rated, and the dampers with new Bilsteins. Now getting these out is a little bit tricky, and there are lots of ways of going at it. So please treat today's video as a how I'm doing it, do you want to see, not a how to do. I do know that Jaguar would have you take the hub bolts out and drop this hub out of the way. I know that many people would drop the entire IRS, the rear axle, down to do this job. I'm going to do it what I think is the easiest way. That doesn't mean that you should do it that way or if it's the right way. Make your own decisions. But here we go, and we're going to start off underneath. We're going to need a 14mm and a 19mm socket. I'm going to use my impact wrench just because I have it, it makes it easy. And obviously I've removed the wheels and jacked the car up. I've gotten a ramp that just makes things really easy for me, but this is totally achievable on axle stands. Underneath the car, just collect my various tools that I've put out of reach. First thing, if you've got a convertible, and I do, you've got these stiffening bars underneath the car. If a coupe, you don't have them. These need to come out of the way, because everything I'm about to do is about being able to allow this arm, this suspension arm, to drop as far as it is able to do. So watch your eyes. Chances are these have never been off before. Long bolt, quite hot. 2 long bolts. That's 1 bar off. I think they're the same both sides, so there shouldn't be any need to worry about handing. Next, we want to take these 4 bolts out of the plate that is bolted to the diff, because ultimately the suspension arms will touch that and that will limit their travel. These are 19. So same thread, but short ones at the back, long ones at the front. And what that's done is given us some leeway here to flex this plate. And in flexing it, we open up this gap, and that's what's going to enable us to do the job a lot easier. So I've just levered that down. Takes a bit of force, because you're essentially just twisting the bushes, the big subframe mounting bushes at the front, and then just popped a socket in there just to keep the gap open, and that's opened this gap here. So yeah, the last clip was taken 2 days ago. A halt was called because the next job is to remove the 2 big bolts that hold the dampers into place at the bottom, one either side. And true to form, and this is common, they do tend to seize in the sleeves in the dampers, particularly if like mine, they've never ever been off. And because of that, the only way to really remove them, and I've used a lot of force penetrant vibratory tools, all sorts on it. So, you know, I'm pretty sure nobody else was going to get them off. The only way to go is to cut through the eye on the damper itself, through the bush, and cut the sleeve. Fortunately, the access is very good to do that. And once it is done, you can drift out the bolt and just be aware that your suspension will drop a little when that happens. And we're getting our brake caliper off, and that's just about improving access for getting the spring out, but also making sure that we don't catch and damage the flexible hoses whilst doing spring removal. If you want to do both the bolts on the carrier rather than just the caliper, so you take both pieces, both big castings of the caliper off, it gives you the most access. There's the ABS cable just there. I'm just going to snip that cable tie just so that I don't damage it whilst doing the rest of the job. I'm clipping from the ABS sensor. There he is. And tuck him up over here with a caliper. Next, you want to remove the 4 13mm bolts that hold the strut mount or spring seat into place, and I find the best way to achieve that is with a couple of wobble extensions on my ratchet. And there's 4 of those around this plate. Again, plenty of penetrant before you start, and I don't think these will give you too much grief. I'm back to you in a minute. Okay, so all the bolts are out of the plate holding the pan up there. I've just positioned, that's loose, a spring compressor on there. It's not going to be doing much work if this goes well. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to nip it up a little bit to take about, I don't know, ½ an inch of length out of the spring. Just going to open up that gap a little bit more. Now, filming might not be ideal from now on, but there comes a point at which I need more to be able to see what I'm doing than you guys do. So I'll do my best to explain. So I've just put my wooden packer in there now, and you can see I can move the suspension down quite a bit extra. If you weren't doing both wheels at the same time, both my hubs are off the ground, you'd need to disconnect the anti-roll bar or it would resist you moving. But both of mine are undone, so that's all fine. And that means we're loose at the top, loose at the bottom. What we're going to do now is push the damper up, telescope it to make it shorter so that it can come out, and do some serious wriggling. Just got a screwdriver underneath the shoulder at the bottom of the damper. It's gas preloaded, not strongly, but means it's always going to keep trying to get long again. So you've got to work it back and then put a bolt for the eye, or a screwdriver in my case for the eye, through the coils, which will stop it from going back again. I think I'd be better off with a straight blade screwdriver, it won't slip so much. Okay. put my other screwdriver through the hole. Right, that can't go back down through the spring seat now. Okay, so we'll take the spring compressor up a little bit further just to help out again, but as you'll see, there's no power or effort going in. The spring is in its relaxed state, and I've probably added a centimetre or so of compression. And I've got double hooks, and they're right around the spring. Now what I'm going to do is just put my screwdriver behind this spring seat at the top and give it a bit of a wiggle, because time has attached it. We're nearly out. Just going to put my pry bar between the bottom of the spring and the lower arm. Almost out. It's far enough out, but it's not going to drop back in there. Always careful, because you've got a spring under compression no matter how lightly. That's free, bar the shouting. Lean on this, and we're out. Move my caliper over a little bit more. Now the damper is able to extend from the top, so the top has risen, and that's just what's making it awkward for me, which when you're assembling you'll have the same problem. So you put a cable tie through the holes in the top hat and attach it to the springs, but we should be able to get this out in a sec. It only looks difficult because I'm being careful. If I was just pulling the thing, it would be out already. Right, I'm going to pull the screwdriver out. That will allow the damper to telescope this way and should give me all the clearance I need. There we go. There we go. More hands needed again. Damper out. Spring out. Oh, caliper. Oh, needs repositioning. First of all, we look up and see the spring seat pocket. This is why you can't get at the dampers from the top. So these are meant to be studs, but 3 of mine unwound. Actually made it easier to get out, in my opinion. To the extent I might even look at a different fitting and put them in with bolts, but that's for a bit later. At the bottom you've got the spring seat, that's paint off the spring. Spring seat shaped for the coil, and with this rubber liner, it should sit like so, and your damper goes through that hole, and the pivot pin for, sorry, the pin for the bottom, the damper goes through there. There's our spring under a little bit of compression, not much, and here is our rear damper, and this is the equivalent of the strut mount on the front. This big rubber element, let's get that out, and that's mounted in a metal top hat. And I've got to say again, on this side, perfectly serviceable on the rear. I've purchased some new ones from SNG Barrett. Looks like identical material and form. There's a part number, anybody who's interested can get to. And that plastic shim sits in there with a spring touching it. So typical Jag, very well isolated but controlled. This, obviously I've done the slot, but is absolutely wrecked. But yeah, I was getting no noise from that. Funny, isn't it? The actual damping action still works, so difficult to compress, and it slowly extends. So the rears have lasted 25 years. We're going to go ask about face engineering. I'm going to put the flats in the vise because obviously we've got a lot of power there. And turn the nut. I could just grip the thread and be done with it, but even though these will end up in the bin, it doesn't seem right. Right, so we grip that and then we'll undo the knot. There we go. Oh, I'm getting tired, I'm throwing my spanners around. Okay, so there's your conical washer. Buffer. Pretty good, decent condition if I say so. The actual strut mount cup. And we've got this, which matches with that, with the cup in between. So there's a metal bush in there, might have to reuse that. And then a big washer. And then this small washer, which I think only exists as a seat for the gaiter. So the gaiter snaps into that groove. So just stack my bits and pieces in the right order. And let's take this out of the vise. So completely crumbled and broken. But well and truly seized on, that was my issue. As we said in a previous video about the front suspension, never ever clamp a damper or shock absorber or strut, insert your own name, in a vise. It looks like I'm doing so. I'm not. I'm using the throat of the vise as somewhere safe to nest this because they're hard to handle. So I'm opening up, put this in his little towel, there we go. I'm bringing the jaws together a little, but this is still very, very loose. But it won't fall out of the vice. So that's what we've got. Here's the setup I had, and all of that is replaced with new with the Bilstein. So I'm very pleased with that. So we'll be removing that nut. Even a new nut. Pulling off the first buffer. Putting our seat on. New buffer. Now obviously this is a dead stop, so you can tighten up until it literally stops. Okay. $17mm again. That's the whole damper turning, so I just grab hold of this end. I'm not going to spin this on using my gun because the nylock will heat up to the extent I might damage it. And bear in mind this nut is out of reach unless we redo this whole process. Okay, so there we are. Just wiped it over with a rag. That's all reassembled, ready to go back in. Brand new bush. There's the damper part number, if anybody's interested. So if we want to compare and contrast new and old, there's our new top isolator. There's the old one. And in terms of height, 34, 32. So about 3mm that this is collapsed by. Not a lot, not a lot. And yeah, certainly it's hardened where it's dark, but this is still very serviceable after 25 years. So I don't think the back isolators are that much of an issue, but I'm using brand new ones anyway, just because. Old springs versus new springs. Overall height, old spring, let's go to top of that pigtail. Old spring is 34, as close as makes no difference. New spring, these are centimeters. Oops. 32, near as makes no difference. So 2 centimeter difference. The coil diameters look very similar. Old coils, 16.5. New coils, no, I'm wrong, it's just deceiving. 17.8. So thicker coils, shorter spring, as we can see marked up, Series 1 XK8 rear. So reassembling this, you've got a tapered coil and a square cut coil. The taper goes at the top. There's this black plastic spacer that fits on top of that. There's a metal top hat that sits on top of that, and then the isolator fits on top of that. Then the whole damper and top cap goes through. Right, we need to just think about orientation. This whole top hat is tapered. It's high one side, low the other. The high side is facing the back of your wheel, so outside of the car. The low side faces towards the diff. or the inside, the middle of your car. So that is now facing the way you'd see it looking in through the wheel arch. We want the damper to have its eye facing front to back in the car. So just turn that so it's the right sort of angle. That will be no problem to adjust later. But most important is getting the coil tail in the right sort of place. And that should be facing the back of your car and towards the diff, not towards the wheel. So that's all roughly orientated. You'd be able to adjust it once it's in, but it's a right pain. So easier to do it now. Next, we're going to use these extra holes that aren't used for bolting the strut cap to the car to cable tie the spring to the seat. Like so. Nothing clever about the two cable ties, by the way, that's just length issues. Okay, so that's attached, and that's a hole that isn't used in the car. And to the other side, you want to go a coil up, like so, and tighten that one up. And that just means the whole thing moves as one. And once it's in the car, and before you tighten up the 4 bolt holes, you cut the cable, tie and whip it out. Now why did we do all that? Because we want to push the damper up into the spring, because at the moment it's going to be in the way all the time while we're trying to get this onto its seat. And even if I compress it, it says hard to get going, and get it flush. As soon as I let go, it slowly returns. I think what I need to do is sit it on something like that. There we go. Okay, and that should settle. And there we are. Because this is a little shorter than the original, it should be easier to get in than got out. And because I no longer have studs, I've got bolts, a little bit easier to get in again. So shouldn't be too much of an issue. I still imagine there'll be grunting involved. Yes. Oh. Nearly there. Was closer, now it's not. That's better. Okay. Just trying to get the tail to seat. I'm on top of a little step at the moment rather than behind it. I'm in the tail of the spring, by the way, if that's not clear. I think, yep, we've just gone in because now the spring is short in its gap. Oh, we're all good, we're all good, we're all good. Right, next mission is get this bolt out that we use to hold the damper up, because that'll take the pressure off. Let's use the pry bar again. Just can take a little bit of weight off damper. I should be able to get the bolt out. It's out. And then down she goes through the hole. There we go. That's through its hole. Spring is in on its seat. Now we're just going to get the other 4 bolts in up top. For that spring seat up there. This is one of the old studs. It's just a little longer than the ones I'm going to use. So I used that for speed. Right, you don't need to see me tighten up 4 bolts. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 cap heads, hexagon heads, Allen heads, whatever you want to call it, with a bit of Loctite. And they're going to go and hold that plate up. Backing them out. As soon as you've got all your bolts in place, but not tightened up, you need to cut your cable ties and pull them out. And we'll get them tightened up. Take all 4 up to just a little over hand tight before you tighten them completely. There we go, all tightened up. At this stage, this is still flying around, so you need to make sure the seat is in the rubber so it doesn't pinch it when it goes up. Like so. That's good. That's good at the bottom. Seated correctly on his pigtail stop. So now I've got a brand new bolts, which again, going to get coppered. This is copper spray rather than copper ease. It's very small copper particle powders. So you don't get as much on there as with the grease, but very convenient, gets everywhere. That's going to go in that hole, but currently misses the damper. All I've got to do is get the suspension arm high enough now to reach that bolt. And as that's now against the suspension, I'll put my jack under here and just lift the arm into position. This SDS long reach jack is brilliant. I bought it because of the motorhome, because that's so heavy, but it's got the advantage of a very long lift and very fast movement as well. And I love it, it's so useful. These new bolts came from S&G Barrett, anybody who wants to know, along with the top isolator bushes. Some of the stuff at S&G Barrett I find very expensive, but it has to be said, they have a better selection of stuff than most people, and for things like special bolts, they're more or less the go-to place. Oh, so close, so close. Get in. Excellent. Let the weight back off the jack. There we go. And now the spring has got a bit of compression on it. Caliper back on. And that is our rear suspension rebuilt. So at that stage, obviously I've got the other side to do, but you just pull out the wooden block using a lever, put the bolts back, calipers back, check everything that you've touched, make sure you put it back exactly where it should be. If you've not been working on both sides at the same time, you'd return your anti-roll bar links and you're ready for putting it down and testing. Right, we're back together. So that's it for this one, guys. Make sure you've subscribed and click the little bell icon so that you get notifications from YouTube when the new videos come out. Costs you nothing to subscribe, helps me as a channel, and puts it as a favourite on your YouTube. And in the next episode of the suspension saga, we'll have the car down on the ground, see how she looks, do some dimensions, take her for a drive, all that sort of good stuff. Me, I'm off to the other side of the car to do it all again. Bye! If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.